But when he died, he left his body in 1965, the whole nation were very overcome by grief. And everybody realized after his death, when he had a state funeral, how much he was adored and respected in the world. Because actually the story of his state funeral is very interesting. First he lay in state for 3 days in Westminster. And during those 3 days, this was in January, the weather was very cold, bitterly cold, no sun, which is usual that time of year. So for 3 days he lay in state, and during that time, more than 300,000 people went to see him lying in state. And at the day of the funeral, he was taken from Westminster to St. Paul's Cathedral through the city, and all along the road there were people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people deep, all the way, and every 10 yards there was a policeman. And when they got to St. Paul's Cathedral, everybody saw that on one side of the aisle were all the dignitaries from all over Europe, even royalty leaders from all Europe were there to pay their homage. And then afterwards he was taken by boat, and when the boat was going down the Thames, all the cranes on the wharfs came down. They lowered the cranes. Sorry, I get a bit emotional about this because, you know, it's what we like as human beings, isn't it? We like to see think people glorified. And he was a last great man of English descent, because he was the end of an age which now has passed. We have now gone into the age of absurdity. But 50 years ago, there was still a little common sense in society. And he was a man of very much common sense. So he was taken by boat, the cranes lowered, and then he was put on a train especially for him. It was named after him, and he was taken. And this is what is reminiscent of this story here, when Krishna and Balaram passed through the countryside. That when Winston Churchill was taken by train, at each crossing and road, there were people gathered all the way along the track, and the farmers took their hats off. Such an outpouring of sentiment for him. And of course there were the guns that went off, 90 guns went off, 90 times the Royal Artillery fired their guns, because he lived for 90 years. So that is a very nice story, well, for me to hear. But the basis, you cannot be compared to what is, you know, when Krishna and Balaram go through the countryside and people come to see them and honor them and worship them. There is no comparison there. Because one is full of meaning and the other has no meaning. Although it may appeal to our sentiments, if we're a little soft-hearted, that someone is honored so nicely and respected. But it is actually meaningless, because, as Srila Prabhupada explains, these great personalities like Winston Churchill and Hitler himself, Mussolini and Lenin, what is their position actually is that if we are Krishna conscious, we will not envy those people, just like we don't praise or condemn materialist activities. But we will see in them what? What will we see? When we see someone like Winston Churchill or Hitler, what will we see about those living entities from a Krishna conscious point of view? Yes, we will see spirit soul, but we see spirit souls everywhere, every living entity, not just human beings, but we see that everywhere. Yes, more to the point, that Krishna has empowered those living entities. This is how we should see, just like if we drink water, we all understand, no, Krishna says, I am the taste of water. So that's Krishna consciousness. We drink water, we understand Krishna, we see Krishna. We experience Krishna, the taste. Just like when you see a great personality who can do things that other living entities cannot do, then we see Krishna there has empowered that living entity. Actually, there's a little anecdote about when Winston Churchill was in St. Paul's Cathedral. Apparently it was a very dull day, but there was one time when the sun came out and a shaft of sunlight hit his tomb, his coffin. It's very... That's how it was reported by his granddaughter. And she was 15 at the time, and she had no idea how great Winston Churchill was, but when she saw all these royalty and all these dignitaries from all over Europe at his funeral, then she realized this was a very great man. So we see, great man, yes, but empowered by Krishna, specifically to carry out some function in the material world. So that's how we can see these great personalities and be Krishna conscious at the same time. But we know philosophically that the activities cannot be compared, because Winston Churchill was honored, but his activities, like the rest of the conditioned souls, are meaningless. Meaningless. Why are they meaningless? Because they're all based upon the principle of nescience, ignorance. Therefore, they have no meaning. It's all based upon the idea that I am this material body. That is nescience, that is ignorance. And everything performed on the basis of that understanding in life has no meaning. Meaningless. All the activities performed for sense gratification have no meaning, because there is no purpose in a life that is spent on sense gratification. There is no ultimate aim. There is no purpose, because the fruits enjoyed are temporary. If we think the aim of life is to satisfy the stomach, then we can do that breakfast time, but then we have to do it again at lunchtime, and then again in the evening. So that is those goals in life have no meaning. You keep having to do that birth after birth after birth. It's just like if you want to become a spiritualist, if you want to become liberated from this world, you cannot do it. It is impossible without tapasya, without austerity. It is not possible to think. So you may be spiritually inclined, you want to go to the forest, because traditionally the forest was a place of goodness. That was where you could find God. But there's no point in going to the forest if you don't control your mind and senses, if you don't perform tapasya. It is meaningless. It's like in modern life, so many people think that they're spiritually inclined, or like to think that they're spiritually inclined. They even accept Hare Krishnas. They may believe in so many New Age ideas. They like to think that Hare Krishna's all right, but they don't like to be addressed as karmis. When we talk about them as karmis, they get disturbed. I've personally experienced this. Why do you use the word karmi? Karmi. But karmi is the official name for one of the four types of human beings. A karmi is a living entity whose life is devoted to enjoying the fruits of his labors. Enjoying the fruits. Krishna describes such a person in the Bhagavad Gita as being a miser. So this is sense gratification. So when we describe them as karmis, that is quite correct. There are karmis, jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. So devotional life is not, our philosophy is not a crippled philosophy. It is not It's not something we have to apologize to anybody about. Or is no reason to diminish our faith in the practice of devotional service and potency of it to relieve the conditioned souls from birth and death. There is absolutely no reason to think, not to have the faith that in this age people are not going to be able to follow the four regulative principles and chant Hare Krishna. As Prabhupada describes Krishna, we are servants of Krishna. And because Krishna is the supreme proprietor, as devotees, we should be free to go anywhere, unrestricted, because we're servants of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme proprietor. We are servants of Krishna. We should be free to go everywhere. We should not have crippled idea that, we have to pay our respects to materialistic conditioned souls. This is very important on our spiritual life. We don't have to become apologetic for devotional service. We must have good faith that it is possible to go back to Godhead in one lifetime. This is Srila Prabhupada's program. And devotional service has been made very easy in this age. All we have to do is chant 16 rounds a day, follow regulative principles. By this process of chanting Hare Krishna, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the heart is progressively cleansed. But the problem is, if we don't apply ourselves to that process diligently, the Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the cleansing of the heart, does not go on. And also, the consequence of that is that the anarthas within our own heart are not removed. And because the anarthas are not removed, then we don't see things as they are. And when you don't see things as they are, you cannot be happy in life. Knowledge gives freedom. The more knowledge we have, the clearer that we can see things, the better we are situated, the happier we are, the more peaceful we are. So in devotional life, when we come to devotional life, everybody is first a neophyte, Kanishta Adhikari. The problem with being a Kanishta Adhikari is that we do not see things as they are. There is not that discrimination that is required to see things as they are. And it's described by the acharyas that the Kanishta Adhikari does not know how to behave towards other devotees, neither towards living entities generally, does not know how to behave towards those. Temple worship is going on, but there is not the advancement, there is not the consciousness where one can distinguish between different levels of human beings, their level of advancement in spiritual life. Therefore, Kanishta Adhikari doesn't see things as they are. He accepts Krishna on the altar, but does not see that Krishna was in the heart. He has not that awareness that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. Therefore, he does not develop his relationships with other devotees and does not know how to behave properly. This is a great impediment for us, of course, because in our daily lives we suffer so much bewilderment, confusion, so much argumentation is going on a daily basis. So if you have a society that is basically of Kanishta Adhikaris, the result will be, without the example of Madhyama Adhikari, that we will not be able to relate properly to each other. We will not be able to relate and conduct our activities with proper Krishna consciousness understanding, because that is the nature of a neophyte consciousness. It is prakriti bhakta, material consciousness. We are trying to become purified, that is true. That is why it's necessary in communities to have the example of Madhyamadikari, minimally, to set the standard of spiritual life, to set the standard of respect that is required. Otherwise, if you don't have that example, there is a tendency to devolve again to relationships like cats and dogs, just arguing, bickering over so many things on a daily basis. And it becomes a struggle to actually even say Hare Krishna to each other. This is if we don't have the presence of that more advanced devotees, because all the acharyas have told us that it is our responsibility actually to develop the intelligence, to discriminate, to know in the practice of our sadhana where we are situated, at what level of purity we exist. Because without that understanding, we will not be able to carry on the main activity or the main proclivity of a Madhyamadikari, which is two things are described. First is to avoid sadhu ninda, offences to other devotees. This is Madhyamadikari now. Remember, Kanishta Adhikari cannot distinguish between who is devotee and who is not. Madhyamadikari has that distinction. And his business largely is not to cause offense and to take sadhu sangha, to appreciate and benefit with the association of other devotees. So therefore, you see, one of the four main activities of a Madhyamadikari is making friends with devotees. This doesn't happen on the Kanishta level. Friendships on the Kanishta level are made according to bodily concept, mainly. Unless the Kanishta is very strict and he takes the advice of the Guru and the other advanced devotees, he will not be able to avoid sadhu ninda, he will not be able to avoid taking bad association, because he doesn't have this discrimination to do that. This is very important. If we wonder sometimes why we're struggling in spiritual life, quite often this is the reason. We cannot distinguish, we cannot discriminate between who is advanced and who is not, who we should associate with and who we should not associate with. It's very easy to know, actually. It's very easy. It should be very easy, but this is the nature of Maya, that when we're under the influence of Maya, we do not see things as they are. Isn't it? This is a miracle. This is like inconceivable. Krishna, Maya, how the Maya can cover us. Prabhu, you're not happy. I'm happy. You know, you could be in the dumps and think that you're still happy. Just like, you know, the gross materials. You go to India and you see how people have to exist there to live, because they haven't traditionally had the welfare you have in Western countries where you can just sit around and do nothing, get paid for it. They don't have that in India. So you see, the people in India have to do the most abominable work just to eat. Just to eat. But one thing you see, have witnessed, that they are happy. They're happy living in squalor and stench, simply because they have their families. They have their families and they have their children. They're happy. And because they have a bite to eat, they're happy. So, seeing things as they are is what we want to do, because to exist in this state of bewilderment and constant conflict, vacillation, hesitation, is a very undesirable state of consciousness to be in. We want to come to a consciousness of seeing things as they are, and minimally that comes in what? Mode of goodness. Only in the mode of goodness. Because in the mode of passion, just foolish activities, no aim of life. Busy, 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 but no aim of life. In the mode of ignorance, no idea about anything. Why we do what we do, goal of life, nothing. Meaning of life. Because life does have meaning. Artadam, Adruvam Artadam, Prahlad Maharaj said so. Human life is meaningful because in human life, devotional service can be performed. And as devotees, it becomes increasingly more meaningful to us as we become purified. When we come to Brahma Bhuta, Prasanatmana, Shochati, Kankshati, then we can see things as they are. We begin to see, in the mode of goodness, we begin to see things as they are. When we become transcendental, and to achieve that, we must accept tapasya, then we can see what is matter, what is spirit. We can see what is happiness, what is not happiness. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana. So, in our daily lives, we should be experiencing meaning. If we don't experience meaning, that means we're again subjected to the modes of material nature. Like if we go through a day and we don't learn anything, we don't have any realizations in a day, we don't improve the quality of our devotional life in a day, that means we've been asleep for that day. We have not realized anything. If you go to the movies and you watch a movie and you don't realize anything from it, what does that mean? You've been asleep. Even if a devotee sees a movie, we can at least see some meaning in it. Everything that we do has meaning, because life is full of meaning for a Krishna conscious person. For a materialistic person, even the greatest, there is no meaning in their activities, because it's all based upon ignorance. And there is no knowledge of how to properly relate to other living entities. So, by the process of Chaito Darpanam Marjanam, the process of chanting Hare Krishna, the misgivings within our hearts will disappear. And the doubt will disappear, because we want to get rid of the doubt. Because while we are still entertaining doubt within our minds, we will not be able to represent the philosophy of Krishna consciousness accurately. That is because we do not see things clearly. Our faith will be undermined in so many ways. And the worst effect, of course, is that we will not be able to follow properly the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Because when doubt exists in the mind, then we will interpret in our own way. And of course, the risk is that our interpretation will become simply academic. Academic, that's all. Our interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita will be academic. We have doubts in the heart. We have so many doubts. Doubt of whether actually, people are going to be able to follow this process, whether they'll actually become purified. We may have doubts because we may, according to our vision, we may think there's a crisis, or we're not making devotees, or whatever. But what is the real crisis in devotional life? It's the individual. If you start giving up the process, otherwise, wherever the process of Krishna consciousness is being performed properly, then that is our society. In India, traditionally, many families were pious, right? They would worship Shalagram Shila or Radha Krishna deities, but Prabhupada explains that now, because the men have become modernized, then they don't follow that anymore. So once these things are given up, the puja must go on, and the acquisition of knowledge, the performance of tapasya must go on, if we actually want to live in a life that is full of meaning. Isn't it? When you get inspiration, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I mean, if we haven't had any recently, then we may forget. That is the problem of Maya. When that curtain comes down, it comes down. Then you think, I'm happy, but I'm not happy, really. Anybody can tell you that. You look at the faces. If you live in a city, I've lived in a city, so many cities, a phenomenon of a city is at night especially, you can hear the most terrible noises, like noises from hell. People screaming and yelling. And you go to the window and look out and see what's going on, and just people are there doing their thing, you know, drunk or whatever. But we will be missing the boat if we think that we can emulate or copy the activities of advanced devotees without actually undertaking the process of purification, getting rid of doubt and misgivings within the heart. Because it's one thing to feel brotherly love, but the devotee who feels that universal love is a Uttama Adhikari, not a Kanishta Adhikari. If a Kanishta Adhikari wants to pretend to be an Uttama Adhikari, then he must also follow the other example of Uttama Adhikari, which is what? Never to forget Krishna. Always to remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Now, if we can do that, no problem. Otherwise, if we can't do that, then the idea of universal brotherhood and love is very difficult to follow. It's like if we want to practice non-enviousness without controlling the mind and senses, it is a waste of time. Simply, it will be a problem to just say Haribol. It will be a problem. But when the inspiration is there, when we're in touch with Krishna, hopefully we will be getting that vision, that jnana chakshus, which means that in all activities we will see some meaning, not meaninglessness, whereby out of some material concoction we are saying this is good, that is bad, and all the rest of it. But we will actually see things as they are. So, in this case, of course, the residents of the countryside, as Krishna and Balaram go through, and these are meaningful activities. These are not temporary activities. These are eternal happenings. Hare Krishna. So, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments, please? Yes, ma'am?
Thank you for your class. 2 days ago, I heard somebody told me that Krishna consciousness also. Thank you for your class. A few days ago, I heard that Krishna consciousness doesn't depend of external things. Doesn't depend of it is not an external process. I heard that it's just internal. So my doubt is we have ISKCON and we have all this process to come together to associate, to serve Krishna in a direct way. So sometimes I get a little bit confused with these commentaries. Can you please illuminate me with what is the... I don't see that it's completely internal, and I don't see why we have to reject the sadhana, the practice, and how can we come to the middle point of equilibrium?
It sounds from your question that there is a little lacking of clarity in the dualities of internal, external, and individual versus community, right? How we behave. Okay, so we're not islands unto ourselves, right? Human being is a social animal. But in order to behave socially, we have to be individually qualified. Because the masses of people are generally, it's not possible to have the masses of people liberated. It's individuals that become liberated by their own endeavors, right? By voluntary endeavor, we become purified in devotional life. Voluntary desire, endeavor. And we are actually alone. We are actually alone. We're a social animal. Human beings are social animals. In the spiritual world, everybody is relating to everybody in harmony, in absolute truth. But it's because when we have a material body, we get stuck in a material body, and then, although the soul is unchangeable, it becomes changeable, right? When we relate to different living entities, we are changed. That's why association is very important, because we take good association, we change for the better. We take bad association, we change for the worst. So we should associate, but we have to associate on a meaningful level. And we have to understand also that we are individuals and that we're responsible for our own purity. Other people, like the example that Srila Prabhupada gives is flying a plane. If you're flying a plane, you may speak to someone in another plane, but they can't really help you. You know, you're flying your own plane. So we have to be responsible as individuals. If we take individual responsibility, then we'll have social adhesion, we'll have community. I don't know whether that addressed your question exactly. Of course we need external association, that is sadhu sangha. But sadhu simply gives you the means to purify yourself. Whether you do that or not is entirely up to you. Cannot be forced. That's why sometimes in spiritual life we think, well, we're not making devotees, there's something terrible going on here. But Prabhupada emphasized so many times that if you can make one moon, then our success in life is there. Just to make one moon. One moon does a lot. Lights up the sky at night. Millions of stars cannot do that. I hope in a broader context I've answered your question, but thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just thinking on that same point, as you pointed out, the external and internals, the external energy and the internal energy, and specifically what I was thinking of is Srila Prabhupada, as the doctor who gives us the prescription of the temples, the wonderful deity worship, the sadhana, the morning program, the association of devotees. And none of these things are external. They're all part of the internal energy. And, right, I mean, it's all his prescription. It's Lord Chaitanya's prescription. It's Bhaktisiddhanta's prescription. It's going right through the disciplic succession. So you may want to question who gave you those ideas, if they were planting a doubt that they had, and with them and the clarification that they need to be able to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada's formula that's authorized through Lord Chaitanya, the whole disciplic succession. It's a potent process. That's how it works.
Yes. Well, we need association because this is one of the main... I want to add this one more point. This is one distinction between a Kanishta Adhikari and a Madhyama Adhikari. Is the Kanishta Adhikari is happy on his own. He thinks he's doing good, if not better than everybody else. But Madhyama Adhikari especially knows that without friendship and association, spiritual life is almost impossible. So therefore his endeavor is to make friendships. And you could say that's external. But this is spiritual life. Yes, right. That's described in the Nectar of Devotion. Yes, if we don't learn, if we don't become discriminate, then we cannot perform those things. We cannot perform loving exchange with other devotees. Unless you know where I'm situated and where other devotees are situated. It's impossible. You'll get things upside down. You will be giving mana where there should be dana. You will be giving compassion where there should be respect, and vice versa. Our relationships in spiritual life are prescribed. We should have a relationship with everybody in a community. Because there are always those who are above us, those who are equal to us, and those who are below us. So every living entity in a community, we should have those relationships should be established. We cannot be neglectful. If you can't say Hare Krishna, it's a serious matter. You know, if it becomes a chore, just like for the materialistic people, it's like being worse than being asked to fight for your country to say hello to the neighbor, you know. It's so demanding because the heart is so full of envy. We don't want to do it. We have to force ourselves to do it. Yes, brother, did you have a question?
Right, this one's not very profound, but historically speaking, if the English loved Winston Churchill so much, why did they throw him out of office as soon as the war was over?
Yes, well, this is a very good example, you see, of the meaninglessness. That is a very good example of the meaninglessness of materialistic life. That they glorified him. I'm giving you a very good answer to this. That, yes? Right. Loaded. That they glorified him 1 minute, and the next minute they threw him out of office. That is a very good example. Excellent example. Thank you. Jai, Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada.